All right, let's welcome to the BS podcast. He is a pop culture icon, a rock star, an actor, a writer, director, you just name it. He is the man, part of all of our childhood in the movie business, of course. New song called Characters out on all major digital platforms. It is the one, it is the only. Corey Feldman. How are you, Corey?
Hello, how are you, brother?
Dude, let's talk about this song. I know inspired a lot of by Beatles,
Yes.
which you without a doubt can hear hands down. You know, you can hear the Beatles influence, but I'm a big storytelling lyrical, being in the music business for 30 years on the radio side of things. I love the storytelling. I love lyrical songs. This is,
Content, yeah.
and it's got the perfect buzz title of Characters. So walk me through the storytelling of Characters and why you chose that, and what if there is any ulterior motive or meaning behind the song?
Well, it's not ulterior motive, but it is kind of on its face a celebration of my 50th year in entertainment. That's a pretty big accomplishment, as you know, most people can't make it around for a couple of years. A lot of people do one series and they're done. They can't get work again, or they do a couple movies as a kid and they don't move on. But it's quite an honor that I've been let into all of your hearts and homes for 50 years now, and uh, and I'm so young. So the thing is like it's kind of ironic. Most people don't hit their 50-year anniversary until they're old and wrinkled, and I feel very lucky to have this honor at such an early age, so I can really appreciate it and enjoy it and still bring you my best quality work. So that's what it's about, and the story itself, it's about all the characters that I've played, but not just the characters I've played. It's also about the characters that have come in and out of my life, and the fact that I've been allowed to come in and out of your lives. And thinking about the kind of retrospective of the fact that we all play characters in our lives. For different people, we're different people. Some people we have to be the strong one. For some people, we have to be the sensitive one. For some people, we have to be the funny person that kind of helps them through their day. For some people, we have to be the compassionate person that needs to give. I mean, it's just we really play a different role in everybody's lives that we interact with. So it's not just about me and my characters, but it's about everybody, the characters that we all play in each other's lives. And then it's also about the fact that, the reason why it's in the style of the Beatles in the first place, which is that, of course, they were one of the greatest bands in history, four of the greatest entertainers in the world, and truly inspired my entire career. Since, if you remember, when I started my career at only 3 years old, the Beatles were still being played on the radio quite heavily because they'd only broken up, a year before I was born. And
Right.
so their last album came out actually the year I was born, right? So heavily they were on the radio and being promoted still. Um, and so I guess that was in my consciousness from a very young age. And my sister was in the Mickey Mouse Club and ironically performed songs from Sergeant Pepper in the Mickey
Yeah.
Mouse Club on stage when she was 7 and I was like 3 or 4. And then going forward, my father was a bass player and singer in a band, much like Paul McCartney. And I was around him, obviously the first 10 years of my life, watching him go on stage at various amusement parks and places like that. So, it was always about like entertainment and fun, but there was also a heavy connection to the Beatles. I was always inspired heavily by the Beatles. And while Paul and Ringo were here, I wanted to also kind of do this as like a gift to them, like, hey, we're still listening, we're still,
Mhm.
being moved and affected by your music. And I just wish John and George were here to hear it as well, really.
Yeah, it's cool that you said that as far as characters go, again, the title song of the new song by Corey Feldman, which again available on all major digital platforms, is that
And is part of a forthcoming EP, I might add.
and a part of a forthcoming EP that you said, Corey, that you recognize, sometimes if you're in the business long enough and, some people just forget how much of an impact they have on the fans' lives. So you had mentioned that a couple times when you were talking, how you recognize how these characters that you played, whether it's Goonies, Stand By Me, you name it, you realize that you were a part of my life. I mean, we're not far off in age.
See
So
what that says?
Well, I can't see it. It's a little far. Oh, Goonies, right there. You got a Goonies. You got a Goonies jersey.
There you go.
So you recognize that when you walk down the street and you see people who are like, "Hey, Corey, how you doing, brother, man? You know, thanks for the good times." You actually appreciate that.
Absolutely. Of course I do. I mean, I appreciate each and every person who's affected by the work that I do. What positive, negative, whatever. I want to hear your stories, you know.
Yeah, that's what are some of the you've been a part of my life, you've helped me through story. Just give me one, maybe top of mind over 50 years of entertainment that's always stood out to you.
I mean, I don't know that there is just one because it's so common. I mean, you have to realize I go and do a concert and meet, 50 people backstage after the show, or I go do a convention and I might, meet 500 people in a day. And so I hear so many stories on a regular basis. Everybody's got a different one and everybody's got something different that's inspired them. So it's really hard to pigeonhole it down to one. All I can tell you is that I'm frequently interrupted or stopped on the street or, going anywhere really. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, I grew up with you. I started watching you, on the McDonald's commercial and I've seen you ever since, or I've grown up with you. Or, gosh, I started watching you when I was a little kid and your movies got me out of my misery and gave me hope. Or your music has inspired me to keep going and not give up on myself. Or your music has kept me alive. I mean, I've heard it all. You know what I mean? So it's beautiful, and I love it, and I encourage people to keep expressing themselves and communicating because it's all about sharing our emotions. That's the human experience.
That's so cool. Your first gig was America Tonight, right? That was your first appearance on
Mm,
television?
No, not my first gig. My first appearance on television was McDonald's commercial when I was only 3.5 years old. I shot it at 3.5 or 4 years old, somewhere in there. That was my very first commercial. It ran for 8 years consecutively, and it won a Clio Award, which is the award for commercials.
Wow.
So that was pretty impressive. But that said, right after that, I got into all sorts of things. My very first television special was when I was 5, and it was with Dick Van Dyke. And
Hmm.
the show was called How to Eat Like a Child. And that was my first that and I believe the Cosby Show. I was on the Bill Cosby Show at maybe 4 or 5, and that was where he had this show. It was like a Bill Cosby live, and he would sit at the end of the show with a group of kids, and he would tell jokes to the groups of kids, and then the groups of kids would say whatever little funny things or whatever back at him, and he would react. And that was a weekly show that he had on. So I did that show and I did the Dick Van Dyke special, and those were actually the first two things that I did
Yeah.
professionally.
And then the first big blockbuster gig for Corey Feldman was Gremlins in '84, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although I was in the movie Time After Time before that, where I was the little kid in the museum. So that was my first bit part in a movie with Malcolm McDowell, Mary Steenburgen, and David Warner. Sorry. And then the big thing, I would say was probably The Fox and the Hound, which was, even though I wasn't on camera, it was my first starring role in a movie where I played Copper in The Fox and the Hound. Then after that was Gremlins.
Yeah, and then when you did Gremlins, Gremlins is a cinematic icon, and obviously you don't know that at the time when you're doing it. So as at that
Oh,
age,
I did.
oh, you did.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I knew this was going to be a huge movie that was going to last forever because it was Spielberg. I mean, all you had to do is look at his track record from Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Close Encounters, and then E.T. I mean, we kind of knew his trajectory, and even the movies that he only executive produced, or what he called executive producing, which is actually co-directing, and that was like Poltergeist, right, which was already a huge success. Amazing Stories, I think, was already on. So yes, we knew anything that Spielberg touched would be gold.
Mhm.
First of all, Joe Dante already had an impressive track record himself as a director, and on top of that, just the theme of the movie, like cute little creatures that everybody would want in their homes, and then they turn evil. I mean, what a premise. I knew immediately this was going to be a huge movie.
Yeah, and Spielberg has a way of kind of doing, he was Easter egging before Easter egging was Easter egging.
Right.
You look at Raiders and you see some of the Star Wars stuff and so on and so forth. And there's,
Oh, I was on the set of the Goonie House. I'll just bring this up quickly. This is why I have this shirt.
sure.
But I was at the Goonies 40th anniversary just last week in Astoria, Oregon, and they've redone the original house to put it exactly back, and I mean inch by inch, to the way that it was in 1984, with every prop, every piece of set deck, every piece of furniture, I mean everything back to 1984. And I have to tell you, there was a lot of Gremlins and ET stuff placed all over that room, at Mikey's bedroom and Brand's bedroom in the movie. And I was like, whoa, I guess with some heavy duty Easter egg going here. So yes, he
Well,
was very big on that.
there's this, I don't know if it's conspiracy or, hearsay of there's this like these worlds that have you in it that match Poltergeist with Goonies, and it's like the same universe.
I
There's a
haven't seen that one, but I've seen Back to the Future and Goonies as the same universe for sure.
I haven't seen that one. I've seen the Goonies and Poltergeist, but not the Back to. Tell me the Back to the Future and Goonies.
I mean, I really didn't pay too close attention, but there was definitely a few articles that I've seen that are comparing it and saying that it's in the same universe. Obviously, Goonies and Gremlins are in the same universe, because the joke in the movie where Jeff Cohen's on the phone with the police officer and he says, "Oh yeah, you're gonna lie to me again, just like the time you told me about all the little green men that you spilled water on them and they multiply." So,
Oh yeah.
so
That's
that was quite intentional.
so like the 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon, fun drinking game or whatever.
Right. Yes, of course, of course. Yes.
There should be a 6 degrees of Corey Feldman. I mean, it's like
I think it's 5 degrees of Feldman.
5 degrees. Oh, it's 5 degrees of Feldman because I mean, we could sit here for the rest of this conversation and have a blast just throwing out different celebrities' names and matching them with you. I mean, everything
Oh,
from the
if
very
you if
beginning.
you go on my Instagram, I actually do a thing every Monday, except I didn't do it yesterday because of the release of the single. But I do a thing called Monday Memories on my Instagram page, and I actually show up all the pictures that I've got with different legends from throughout the eras. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating even putting the collections together. But I've been putting out like 10 to 20 legends. It's a legend series, so it's only legends, but I've put together probably about 5 of them already, 6 of them, a series of 10 to 20 legends and me in pictures, which is great. It's great to remember all of these memories, going, wow, I don't remember that, but okay, cool. Oh, I met him, all right, cool. Met her, great. So it's fun.
Some actors, whether they have a long career or not, they'll do movies and some big movies, and they won't have the track record like you have, Corey, of being in these films with actors and actresses that became A-list, top of the food chain, amazing talent. And it seems like every one of your movies, I mean, I could just name 5 off the top of my head, were just so big with such big names that went on to do such big things. And I guess that would be accredited to the casting and the director, right? I mean, knowing who to put in there and what their future is going to hold.
I mean, is it that, or is it a bit of trickery from the entertainment industry who kind of plan things out that way? Like, is it a coincidence that there were 3 movies in a row starring the 2 Coreys? Hmm.
Hmm.
Was that a bit of movie magic, or was that just coincidence that we happened to, apply for the same job at the same places at the same time and both got lucky enough to get those jobs? That's the way it was presented to us, but something tells me it wasn't quite that casual. I think that it was probably a bit more planned.
So you're saying the movie industry, this is interesting, really interesting, because I'm going to bring something up in the music business that I was told the other day. And this one, well, you might not have heard it, but it'll blow your mind a little bit. So you're saying, Corey, in the movie business, that it's strategic. There's certain people that are picked and they say, hey, look, we're going to make a star. We're going to invest in this person, like the 2 Coreys, say, for example. And this is the plan, 1, 2, 3.
Well, we won't tell them, because if we tell them, then they're going to want more money. So we make them feel like they're just getting lucky and haphazard that they get these jobs. And then we negotiate with them individually and don't let them know that, they're going to be starring with their friend again until they get there, or until, one of them is signed.
And that still happens today.
Oh yeah, well, more so than ever, because nowadays they're developing projects around TikTokers or around Instagram stars or, influencers, or even AI people. So, you never know what you're going to get in the future, but let's hope that we keep with the consistency of them, taking entertainers and building them up because they're great actors, or they're great musicians, or they're great whatever. The worst thing we would want is, a wave of influencers that really don't have much talent other than, knowing how to lip sync, or knowing how to, do a sketch comedy or something that, they wrote with, AI or whatever. It's not the same.
Great.
This is about innovation and creation, and there's true artists out there that deserve to be heard, that need to be heard to keep us moving forward and evolving as a race. We can't just all of a sudden think that computers can replace us when it comes to art, because art must involve emotion, and if it doesn't, there'll be something missing that's void.
I agree. I agree. But I think you and I, again, around the same age, we're, a dinosaur way of thinking to a new generation where their argument's going to be, well, AI is going to make it perfect. Why not make it perfect? And I don't have to do half the work. But, the emotion.
Because it can't be perfect. It can't be perfect. It can't be perfect without a human, because the point of human interaction is that we bring heart and soul to each thing we deliver. We care, we have passion behind it. A computer can never feel passion. A computer doesn't have a soul.
What makes perfect in art, in my opinion, is flaws. You know,
Exactly, when you can find the imperfections. And I try to explain that to my engineer and musical partner all the time. He'll be like, "Oh, I got to make this perfect." I'll be like, "No, if it's too perfect, it sounds canned." You
mhm.
know what I mean? Like, it's got to have that organic quality to it. If I hit a bad note once in a while, so be it. If somebody plays something on an off key or whatever, let it go. Because if it works, if it blends, and it's only a second,
Mhm.
then people aren't really going to notice unless they have a trained ear for it.
Yeah,
So
there's so many success stories in the history of the world that have started with a flaw. I mean, even in the music business, I remember listening to an interview on Howard with Steven Tyler of Aerosmith talking about, and I forget which song it was, but like the instrument that he was playing broke, and they had to
or
do.
if he was playing an instrument, it was probably the harmonica.
No, it was like that thing that you twist and turn, and it's like
Oh, the shakers,
like yeah, it's like one of those shakers things. But the story was
the ratchet thing
yeah,
that
yeah,
the
yeah, and it broke, and they kept it in the song, and and how they use sugar packets for different noise, like those kind of flaws. That's what makes art, in my opinion. I mean, in the radio business, I would always tell, especially younger talent, like, dude, just let it go. The
But
challenge.
see, that's the thing. Something breaks down. It's about the innovation. It's about the creation, and it's about finding a way to replace it in a different way, or in a meaningful way, like a sugar packet for a shaker. I mean, I use all sorts of things. I'm in my studio right now, so I can actually show you an example. But like, here goes. This is a little skeleton head,
Yeah,
but
he shakes. He's got noises. The skeleton's got
you know what I mean?
noises.
Yeah. So, that's the thing. Everything is something, in the
Yeah.
studio. And that's the way I love to experiment. If you've ever listened to my band Truth Movement, which is kind of like, as characters, my new song is a tribute to the Beatles. My band Truth Movement as a whole is a tribute to Pink Floyd. And so, a lot of the stuff that we have done in both albums is very inspired by Pink Floyd, almost emulates the sound of Pink Floyd, the vibe of Pink Floyd. And, we even got John Karen and Scott Page from Pink Floyd to perform on it with us. So, it was very truistic to the sound. And in that setting, I wanted to constantly look for things that were innovative and creative to do things differently. I'll give you an example of that. One day we were trying to get a certain sound out of my vocal that we wanted it to be very squelched and compressed. And so what we did is we took a little pig nose amplifier, and we put it in a metal file cabinet, you know, those old metal file cabinet drawers, and
Yeah.
we stuck the little amp in there, and we took a microphone and we put it in the drawer with the little amp, and then we ran that into the board. And so something like that is like a sound that nobody would ever even think of, but it was a great effect. It worked brilliantly.
Well, look at, Nirvana was pretty broken down. The White Stripes, I mean, when they came out with their first album, that was the talk of the album of how it was so simplistic. And they were
Right, three pieces.
three pieces. That was it. And
Right.
and everybody loved it. And now look, Seven Nation Army is an anthem for stadiums. And
Mm.
it's like the most basic song you could possibly put together as far as technology goes. So,
Mm.
look, I'm all in with your opinion on the AI stuff. It drives me insane, especially in my business. It absolutely drives me nuts. Your Goonies shirt that you're wearing, I'm guessing you're alluding to the fact that we have more of Goonies coming here in the near future.
Oh, I didn't say that. No, this is strictly about see, it's if you look there, it says
85,
uh yeah,
great year.
85, and then it also on the shoulder there. Now, this was actually gifted to me. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So
Never died.
yes, it's all about the 40th anniversary though.
Okay.
There's a big 40 on the back, which I can't show you. But the point is that sorry, framing. But the point is that this was actually a gift by a friend of mine, and that friend of mine actually directed uh the Comeback King video. Was it? No, Go For It video. He directed the Go For It video, and he also helped produce the Joke video with me. Um, Chris McDaniel, Dr. Chris McDaniel is his name. Great guy from Arizona. Started off as a fan, and then we connected several times, and he explained to me that even though he was a doctor, he had great love for art and cinema and wanted to be a director. So he showed me some of his stuff, and I said, "Well, come do a video with me." And so that's how the relationship started. But he sent me this shirt. He had it made for me. It's very sweet.
Well, with your movies, let's look at some of the big blockbusters. Go to Goonies, Lost Boys in particular. Is there and should there be a two and or a reboot, especially with
Well,
Lost Boys?
Lost Boys already has three movies, man.
I'm talking, yeah, you know what I mean, a reboot though of today's like.
Well, that's no, I don't believe in reboots at all. I think reboots are awful ideas. I don't support them generally. That said, there is one reboot I may consider being a part of, but I can't talk about it. So we'll leave that for a surprise if it happens.
Okay.
But as far as the sequels, that's the way to go. I mean, to me, like, it was fun doing the sequels to Lost Boys. I wish they would have had more of the original cast, but I fought very hard to get Haim and Jameson Newlander in those movies as a part of them, and to be part of the texture of them to keep it authentic. And we got Kiefer Sutherland's brother Angus to do the lead vampire in the sequel to Lost Boys. So there was a lot of connective tissue, that kept it authentic. And if it's authentic, if it sticks to the characters, it sticks to the storyline, then I think fans are interested. As we've just seen with Beetlejuice, it works when you bring back the original cast and put them in their original characters as an advanced age versus rebranding, rebooting, all this crap where people don't want to see that. They want to see their favorite characters coming back to life again.
Well, I think the idea of nowadays is to milk the market and reboot it by using the original characters if you can, but introduce, I mean, like look at Top Gun. You still got Tom Cruise, but that's just being set up for a franchise down the road, so on and so forth. With Goose's,
Maybe, I mean, maybe, yeah. You never know, right?
I
You
mean,
never
I mean
know.
that's what they do with Lost Boys. I think such an underrated and unappreciated score soundtrack for like if you go through movies that have great soundtracks, and every obviously Kenny Loggins gets tons of credit and rightfully so. But I just think the Lost Boys should always,
Randy Newman has done a few.
yeah, the Lost Boys. That soundtrack is fantastic.
It is indeed. So here's the one. You talk about a brain scratcher for you. How about this? It's ironic, but they are actually rebooting Lost Boys as a Broadway musical,
Re-
and the craziest part is they're doing a completely original soundtrack. So they're throwing away the entire hit soundtrack that everybody loves, and they're replacing it with their own show tunes. Do you think it's going to work?
Well, I mean, it depends on if the audience hasn't seen Lost Boys and they don't know any different, then I mean, it's got a shot. But you can't.
Right, but the audience is coming for the nostalgia.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you take away all the elements that they're used to? I just don't know how that works. Now the irony of it is, the guy who wrote "Cry Little Sister," G. Tom Mack, actually wrote an entire Broadway musical of his own with songs that were related to the themes of the Lost Boys characters and things that were in it, and that got shut down. So they ended up going with completely original music and a completely original band and all this stuff. But we'll see what happens.
You can't have Lost Boys without that, that kind of chanty, monkish kind of
Cry Little Sister, it's called.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so good. When you go on set and you're working with other big resume artists, actors that you're, a fan of, and you might not have a relationship with, but you're a fan of their work. Do you ever kind of mark out for them at all, fan out and say, oh my God, can we talk about this or can we talk about that? Or is it just kind of, like, let's just keep it cool. I'm not going to say.
No, we don't talk about things like that. That's not how it works when you're with other entertainers. The way it works is generally you let them bring up what they want to talk about, and like they'll bring up something and you'll be like, oh wow, I can't believe you're bringing that up with me because I've heard about that so much in the news or whatever, so you let it happen organically. You don't sit there and act like a fanboy and be like, oh, remember the time when you were in this movie, or what was it like being on this set, or because if you did that, they would be annoyed pretty quickly and they wouldn't want to talk to you anymore.
Okay, well then I'll calm down and I'll let you go.
Well, that wasn't meant as a shot, man. I'm just saying, that's how it is. It's kind of like, it's the club. It's really like the club, and people who are in the club know, you respect each other's privacy because we all have so much media shooting us, crazy questions, or social media trying to invade our privacy, that it's like when you're with other people at your own level, you want to just kind of like back off a little bit, let them have their day,
Well,
so anyway.
Well, I hope I wasn't.
No, you're a host, man. It's your job.
I'm a fan, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the time that you gave me. And it was, we had met years and years ago at when we were a lot younger, and it was a bar scene in Orlando at the Booby Trap. It was a long time ago. Years.
Crazy.
30 years ago we had met, and so it was just great to have you on. I'm a fan.
Well, you looked exactly the same, Jason, I gotta say.
So do you.
Thanks.
Brother, best of luck. Right. Well, get off the couch, Corey. Do something.
Yeah, right. Stop being lazy.
All right, Corey Feldman, brother. Thank you so much.
God bless.
We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Subscribe at jasonbailey.com.
Yeah, baby.